Emergency broadcast number 0.
The alert tone woke me up. It wasn't loud. It didn't snap me awake or flood the room with urgency. It was soft, almost careful. 3 identical chimes, evenly spaced, each one quiet enough that I almost convinced myself the first had been part of a dream. By the third, I was awake. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my phone to vibrate or light up. It didn't. The room stayed dim, lit only by the street lamp outside the window. I reached for my phone anyway. No notification, no alert history. The time read 2:17 a.m. The weather app showed clear skies until morning. That was when the radio turned on. I didn't remember plugging it in. I didn't remember the last time I'd touched it. It had been sitting on the nightstand since I moved in. More decoration than anything else. Static filled the room. Flat. Even. It didn't surge or fade the way static usually does. It sounded deliberate. Then the voice came through. Calm, neutral, familiar in a way that made my stomach tighten.
This is an emergency broadcast. Please remain indoors.
That part settled easily into my head. Storm warnings used the same tone. Flood advisories, power issues.
Do not look at the sky after sunset.
The voice didn't pause. It didn't stress the words. It delivered the sentence with the same measured cadence as the one before it. I waited. Counties, time frames, instructions, an end tone. The radio clicked off. The silence afterward felt heavier than the static had, like the sound had taken something with it when it left. I checked my phone again. Local alerts, national alerts, news sites, social media. No one mentioned a broadcast. No one asked if anyone else had heard it. Outside, the streetlight buzzed softly. Above it, the sky looked empty. I didn't sleep much after that. Morning arrived without explanation. Nothing appeared on the news. Nothing trended online. From my window, the city looked the same, but it felt restrained, as if something had pressed a hand down on it overnight. On the bus to work, people spoke quietly. Several seats near the windows stayed empty even as the aisle filled. A man across from me kept his eyes fixed on the floor, even when sunlight poured in through the glass. At work, conversations stalled quickly. Phones stayed face down on desks. Meetings ended early without discussion. When I asked a co-worker if she'd heard anything strange overnight, she stared at her screen for several seconds. "I don't think it was for us," she said. I asked what she meant. "That's just how it felt." She went back to typing. No one else joined the conversation. The radio turned on again that evening. Earlier this time. Static filled the room, while the sky outside still held light at the edges.
This is emergency broadcast 0.
There was a pause before the last word. The event has not concluded. I realized I was standing near the window. The curtains were open. The sky had shifted into darker colors, the light stretching longer than expected. A plane crossed overhead, its lights blinking steadily. "If you hear movement above you," the voice continued, "remain still." I stepped away from the window. Do not attempt to verify the source. The radio shut off without an end tone. I left the lights on that night. Sleep came in pieces. Every sound pulled me back to the surface. Pipes, wind, distant traffic. Each one made me hold my breath until it passed. Over the next week, the city learned new habits. Stores closed earlier without posting signs. Doors locked at sunset. Restaurants removed outdoor seating. Balconies emptied. Rooftops went unused. Upper floors darkened first. I watched it happen from the street. Windows going black one by one as evening approached. Ground floors stayed lit longer. Basement lights stayed on all night. One of my neighbors boarded up the upstairs windows of his house. Only the upstairs. The lower floor stayed unchanged, curtains open, lamps glowing. When I asked him about it, he smiled too quickly and said birds had been hitting the glass. The boards were thick, bolted in from the outside. Another neighbor started moving his car every evening. He parked beneath the same overpass several blocks away. He returned home on foot before sunset. No one asked him why. Time stopped behaving normally. Morning arrived later. Evening arrived sooner. Sunset stretched across the horizon, refusing to finish. Shadows lingered longer than they should have. People stopped using certain words. Conversations bent around them. Weather reports talked about temperature and humidity, but avoided anything above street level. I stopped checking the forecast. The radio went silent. Days passed without static or voice. That silence felt heavier than the broadcasts. Without the voice, there was no confirmation that the rules still applied. No reassurance that compliance mattered. Just the sense that something was still there, still waiting. On the fifth night of silence, I heard movement above me in the middle of the afternoon. Slow, careful, a deliberate shift of weight crossing the ceiling from one side of the apartment to the other. I stayed seated at the kitchen table until it stopped. When it did, I realized my hands were shaking. People began disappearing. Not suddenly, quietly. A coworker didn't show up on Monday. No email, no explanation. Her desk stayed untouched. A neighbor's lights stayed on for days without anyone answering the door. Groceries sat outside an apartment until someone moved them without comment. Cars remained parked in the same spots. Dust collected along the tires. Leaves gathered beneath them. No alerts were issued. After sunset, buildings went dark from the top down. Bedrooms first, upper floors, anything with a view. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. The ceiling felt closer there. There was one evening when nothing happened. No broadcast, no static, no movement above me. I sat on the floor anyway, back against the wall, lights on, eyes fixed ahead. The silence stretched. It felt deliberate. The next night, the radio turned on before sunset.
This is emergency broadcast 0.
The pacing had changed. The words came closer together.
Visual contact has increased risk.
I closed my eyes.
Auditory indicators may no longer be reliable.
Something shifted above me, heavier. The ceiling flexed slightly.
If you believe you are alone,
The voice said.
you are mistaken.
The radio shut off. The pressure lifted. After that, the sounds stopped following patterns. Sometimes movement came in the morning. Sometimes just after sunset. Sometimes while I was in the shower or standing in the hallway. I stopped standing upright beneath open spaces. I learned where the shadows fell in each room and stayed within them. I stopped using rooms with high ceilings. One afternoon, I heard footsteps in the apartment above mine. That apartment had been empty for months. The steps were slow, measured. They crossed the room, paused, then returned the same way. Later, I saw lights on up there. The next day, they were gone. Birds disappeared. I didn't notice when it happened, only that I hadn't heard one in days. Construction cranes stood abandoned. Rooftop billboards went dark. Antennas bent downward slightly, as if pressed. People outside moved faster, heads down. No one looked above the tops of cars or trees. One afternoon, a man stood in the middle of an intersection, staring upward. Traffic went around him. No one honked. The next day, he was gone. Weeks passed. The radio never turned on again. That worried me more than when it did. Sometimes, late at night, I hear static anyway. Faint, directionless, like it's coming from inside the walls. At night, the air presses downward. It feels heavier above my head than near the floor. Like gravity increases the higher you stand. I sleep on the couch now. Sometimes I wake up convinced the ceiling has lowered. Sometimes I hear breathing that doesn't belong to me. I haven't looked up. I don't plan to. I stay indoors. I follow the rules that were given once and never repeated. And every evening, just after sunset, the space above me tightens. I stay very still.